Hey everybody, hope you're doing well. Today I have got the Knight of Wands as the obstacle and the Two of Cups as the opportunity. So let's have a look. This guy, this jerk face, Cavalier de Bâton. Um, this is an this represents an individual, I think, uh, more so than it serves as a metaphor or symbol for a situation, for an environment. I think this card certainly refers to an archetypal person. I think more likely to be male than female, but not necessarily. I think with archetypes, I think it could be useful to think of this as maybe more something along the lines of a masculine individual as opposed to a male. But one way or another, this is a person who is impulsive, who runs on runs on instinct, is highly motivated by creative and sexual urges. They could be combined. He could be someone who does a lot of, I don't know, nude photography, creates some sort of art that is sensual, sensuous, romantic, sexual. Maybe he's a maybe he's a singer that sings about doing it. It's an R&B singer. Um, it's someone who operates it's someone who operates on instinct, and someone who is someone who's very successful at what they do. And in this scenario, this is an obstacle in the sense that a person like this, if they're in your life, they're not gonna stop and think about how a certain action they might commit is going to affect you or the environment or things. They're they're highly driven, highly impulsive, and in a way, it's hard to blame them. They're the kind of individual who has become highly successful because of this. So it could be an artist, in the sense that it's someone who they don't know where they get their ideas from. They just do. And sometimes when inspiration strikes, they know they just have to move and start creating. And if that's the process by which they've gotten where they are, become successful, then it it's hardly surprising to confront them with the fact that they don't stop and think before doing things. It's like this is what leads to their success, right? This could also be someone who's like maybe not a pickup artist, because I think I think a lot of I kind of see the majority of pickup artists as being highly intellectual and rehearsed and calculating. But this would be like a natural, almost like a natural helpless Casanova, or it's one of these people that there's plenty of songs, there's plenty of archetypal songs about the uh, the boyfriend or the lover or the love interest that um, they just can't help flirting with ever. It's like they might have a girlfriend, they might be married. As soon as they start interacting with some woman or something, it's just like they're just always flirting, always on, always seducing, um, and they can't help it. Or you, maybe that's not fair. They certainly don't resist their those intuitions, those impulses. And again, this is if if we're talking about the kind of archetypal, you know, uh, lover, um, it's been working out for them. So again, this is the kind of person who it's like, why should they stop and overthink things? Like, so far everything they've been doing works out. They go to a party, they go to a social gathering, they is like very extroverted individuals. There's no, it's like an automatic, it's like this, it's like a flow state. You're just on autopilot. You don't think about what you're gonna say. You see an attractive person, you go over, you start talking, you start doing there's no plan. but but it works, consistently. So this is the kind of individual who um could be really impulsive, and this could really fuck things up for people around them. Obviously, they're very short-sighted. Um, but at the same time, it's it's incorrect to see their actions as being deliberated and based on the desire to fuck things up, the desire to break up relationships, the desire to, if this person has some sort of creative idea, some sort of creative expression that makes some sort of a statement that is offensive, or whatever they create ends up shifting the social balance or the political balance, or it introduces some chaos. It's like it's inaccurate to interpret the outcome as something that they intended to do, because this card is describing the kind of archetypal individual who is just they're not thinking that far ahead, right? Um, and again, it's important to remember that it's been working out for them. So this isn't someone who's like doing impulsive stuff and it just is ruining their life. This is someone who's become quite successful in their respective areas. This wouldn't necessarily be someone who is wealthy because of this kind of talent they have for creativity and seduction and action. Um, Nor would this necessarily be a person who has benefit in the sense that they have made you know deep, profound, loving relationships out of this. It's like what they've been what they've been getting out of this is like things associated with actions, in, like what's the word I'm looking for? Not incentive, initiative. They win races. They get to a place first. Um, s- Sexual stuff like getting laid, hooking up, creative stuff. If this is an artist, it's not necessarily the kind of artist who gets paid a lot of money for their work. They could just be a very successful artist that it's worth it to them because they are living up to the heights of their sort of standards for creative accomplishment, right? So it could be, yeah, it's like someone really confident. Their confidence is based on all the success they've had. That keeps them from questioning the thoughtless approach, with which they go into situations. So yeah, if this kind of person starts messing around, starts fucking up with your life, for one, it's good to be able to recognize these kinds of people. And they could, like, these highly extroverted, very, they're always animated. These kinds of people could be extremely attractive, right? They could be super entertaining to be around. The flirtiness and all, it could be really exciting. Nonetheless, the first part of the obstacle, I think, the first warning is, despite the natural charismatic attraction to individuals like this, it's important to remember that these are exactly the kind of people who are going to do impulsive shit, and sooner or later, one of those impulsive things that will benefit them, it's not going to screw them up, it will screw you up. So that's the first part of it. And the second part is, it is then when that does happen, it it's just not really reasonable to try and like treat these people like they did intentionally, or to try and even explain to them that like their actions have consequences. It's that's not the level they operate on. So it could be it would be a mistake to try and expect people like this to change, to be able to understand that kind of long-term thought. And so that's kind of like a mistake that people can make on their own behalf. Like this is a perfect candidate for the you know, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me kind of thing. Like this person is just going to keep conquering and winning on instinct and impulse. Just accept it, keep your distance, or if you're gonna involve yourself with an individual like this, um, just have a very clear idea of what you're getting into. Don't have expectations of this person miraculously changing into some sort of considerate individual overnight. You know, this is not who this person is. So good to sort of get that archetype, understanding of that archetype, and then for the opportunity, Two of Cups. Man, what do cups mean? What do any of these suits mean? I was having a fun time today trying to do some decoding. On a side note, on a meta note, I'm starting to suspect that the Marseille tarot, which is the one that I am primarily interested in, I'm starting to suspect that there are intentional inconsistencies and intentional meaningless details put in that essentially guarantee that uh, it's impossible to ever decode it because there's nothing there that's encoded. It's just randomness, and that the goal of this is to create a heightened mood of curiosity. It's like a David. It's kind of like a David Lynch, like a Lynchian philosophy. You know, you the like David Lynch makes these mystery. He crafts these mystery stories that the point of them isn't to have a cathartic moment at the end of the movie when it gets explained. Oh, it was the butler all along. I was very curious about who it was. Good thing I found out. His whole thing is like never tell you, just give you more and more questions because ultimately the thing that's really valuable to us, I think, in terms of his philosophy, and I certainly agree to an extent, is it's the mystery that's the valuable, you know, being feeling inspired, feeling that it's inspired energy and curiosity that we feel when we're actively trying to solve something. That's the valuable experience. That's maybe the ideal way to go through life, not immediately satisfying any curiosity. I wonder what this is. Oh, great, I found out. Now I know. The end, right? Like, but yeah, I was trying to decode the cups, and then I kind of got to that. I guess it's not a realization because it's not confirmed one way or another. Um, but I do like the idea of the suits being sort of representative of three states. The middle of each one being associated with individuals. The lower one being um, earthly and more physical, less abstract, and the highest one being purely abstract and not relating to any actual real things. And the two is kind of it's the first card of that bottom earthly series. And so, even though the Waite card on the right portrays these two individuals, these lovers maybe, young, the young betrothed, um, I don't think this card is yet dealing with interpersonal relationships. I think I like to think about this one, or at least at this point in time, the way I'm enjoying interpreting this card is like children. It's kind of like a Freudian Jungian psychoanalytical concept where like before you could get into before you could form relationships with people, before you could even really conceptualize or even on a subconscious level start creating the kind of structures for yourself that will govern your ideas about relationships. you're exposed to, well, maybe, hopefully, you're exposed to the relationship of your parents. And this is before, conceptually, it's at that point, you have no idea what relationships are. It's not like you're a kid and you're like, oh, yes, this is my dad and my mom. They're in a relationship. You're just seeing two individuals, and for a lot of people, these are largely the only two individuals that you really see. Maybe if you have siblings, you see your siblings, but very on in early childhood development, you see you have these archetypal kind of placeholders for a relationship and for these two individuals. And I like the idea of the roles that your parents play in real life being mapped onto you subconsciously and consciously, and sort of contributing to the creation of these definitions of roles. And symbolically, I like it. I mean, I don't know how accurate I would say I believe it is to be in a, let's say, a psychiatric capacity, but I think that having developing ideas, developing concepts about masculinity and femininity, or and again, at that point, you don't even. It's not like you even have an understanding of that as a concept, but developing this concept of the two halves, the two parts of this relationship that are outside of you, contributes to your development of these sort of archetypes within yourself that then you recognize in other people. And then at some point you could start recognizing yourself as being one of those halves in a relationship. That's both useful, and it's kind of imprisoning, because if you if you fully sort of take on and assimilate this idea of people being parts of relationships, then it could be really difficult to ever see yourself as a whole, or as an individual, because you can only see yourself as, okay, well, which half of the kind of the relationship dyad do I have most in common with? I don't know. I guess I'm kind of like my dad, and that means that you kind of can't be all the things that your mom was, right? And again, I don't think this is entirely bad. I think there's certainly a lot of resistance. There's a lot of people who, if you tell them they can't be everything all at once, they reject this notion, right? I think there's a lot of advantages to um, embracing the idea that you could only be half of something, and that other people could contribute to complementing that half. And I don't necessarily think it has to be like the one true love of your life or whatever, but I certainly believe that for many people it is, right? But again, before this before this card starts being some sort of symbol for something that happens in a relationship, I like to think of this card as just before you get into relationships. This is like the relationship that you have with yourself. Some people say, "Oh, you got to love yourself." You know, how do you expect anyone to love you if you don't love yourself? Uh, Things like that. I I don't think that is an entirely accurate way of phrasing or imagining what is happening inside on the subconscious level. When somebody says, "Oh yeah, he really hates himself," it's like, I think an accurate way of thinking about that would be like, the mom in him really hates the dad in him, or the other way around, right? It's like one half of you is not attracted to the other half. Some of the standards are not, working with the other ones. It could be really depressing for people who who outwardly project their own expectations of, if they're straight, of the opposite sex, outwardly project them, and then kind of come to the conclusion that, let's say for me, I'm a man. Um, no woman out there is going to ever love me, right? Like, that's a reflection of my own internal idea of me as a man and my internal idea of women. And if I feel like the man inside of me can't offer anything to the woman inside of me, can't live up to the needs or demands of that woman, I just end up projecting that outwards, and therefore I will never have a relationship with a woman out of the world. Whereas I think, when people talk about individuals who have self confidence, who really love and value and admire themselves, who have a great relationship with themselves, I literally think that means that they are sort of balanced in this kind of way where they both, like in Jung, it's like the anima or the animus, right? So it's like whatever your sex is, it's the opposite, um, that you would that you would be attracted to romantically, sexually, whatever, right? Um, but yeah, it's like those people that are like really confident, really love themselves. It's like they have this really healthy relationship with their anima or animus. Their projection of the other is something that like really likes them and supports them and is happy for them and whatever. Um, and I think this card symbolizes that state. It's like, and it's either a state. There's two versions of it. I think fitting as it's the number two card. I think one of them is the childlike innocence, the boundless childlike self confidence that kids have before they develop this specialization, before they develop the split, right? Because there's certainly this period for essentially all children where they are not relationship oriented, they're not sex oriented, they're just little individuals. Like they're not even operating on that level socially, culturally, any of that. So there's that initial innocent stage of where these you're this little person and you're so endlessly supportive of yourself because you don't even have the faculties to criticize yourself yet in that sense, right? Um, so I think this card simultaneously symbolizes that, like, beautiful, stupidly naive, endlessly optimistic, childlike, singular experience of the self, as well as potentially something that happens much later in life, involving, you know, finding how to have that really great, healthy relationship with your, in the Jungian sense, with your anima or animus, so that you could, sort of regain that sense of oneness where, you know, you have that confidence. You yourself are able to satisfy your internal projection of the other. Therefore, why wouldn't you expect anyone anyone else to do the same? Fuck. See, another hilarious little link that I could come up with now. This is very likely something that a lot of these individuals will possess. You know, there are some, and I've certainly seen it with men, or maybe I've noticed it with men more often than with women. But there are certain individuals that, like, the thing that makes them so charming, I think, and irresistible, is that they just operate under this presumption that, like, why would you think highly of them? What possible reason would anyone have not to think that this person is, like, totally amazing? They love themselves, and it's not necessarily from some sort of false, deranged narcissistic way. It's like they're just genuinely really balanced, and they can really love themselves. So they just, somebody once told me, I was in Europe and I was talking to this guy. I think I was in Italy. Yeah, I was just outside of Venice, and I was pretty young, and I was talking to this guy, slightly older, but he was giving me the speech like he's an experienced man, and he was like, "Oh yeah, when you talk to women, you talk to any woman, you already have everything that she ever wants because you're a lover, you know, and so as long as you're a lover, you have all you need to satisfy any woman. You don't need money, you don't need anything. You just just love making, right? It was super. It was like a talking to a caricature out of it's the Italian lover man explaining to me. I think I'm like 14 at the time. This guy's maybe 20, but to me, he's a mature man, right? An Italian lover man explaining the secrets of seduction to me. Um, but yeah, so like these kinds of individuals, they're like you know that level of confidence in terms of their sexuality. I think could often be something along the lines of it's like I am a sexual being. I am capable of having intercourse, you know, and it's going to be great. And therefore, why would anyone reject me or not be into me? And then they have this crazy confidence, right? Um, but yeah, so I think this too, it doesn't necessarily represent that kind of balance just in the sexual sense. It could be um, not feeling like you're alone, feeling like you're sort of complete, even if you happen to be by yourself. Um, yeah, not feeling isolated, feeling not feeling like the world is criticizing your decisions and choices and beliefs. Feeling like you have a like there's a supportive individual that loves you no matter what, regardless of they have total support of you. Oh yeah, this also kind of reminds me of this really funny, interesting thing that I read about. This I read about this person who was schizophrenic, heard voices, auditory hallucinations, but the voice she heard, often was more often than not with schizophrenics. If you're having auditory hallucinations, they can be really scary, and they can be saying really fucked up shit. Often, they coax you to do bad things or to hurt yourself or whatever. Anyway, this woman, she had auditory hallucinations. It was a singular voice, and and it was a guy, and he had a name, and he was in love with her. And she would have these auditory hallucinations of this guy. He would write poetry for her. He would sing her songs. He would like, if she was having a hard day, he would cheer her up. He would coax her. He'd be like, "Hey, you can do it. Get back in there." And I remember reading about that. I was like, "Yeah, Why have I never imagined? I never even thought of that as a possibility." Which is funny too, because you hear of people hearing voices in their head, and it just feels natural to presume that that's a bad thing, and therefore the voices would be bad. But how? I mean, it's still really weird, right? And she knew it was weird. She's like, "Yeah, I know people don't hear voices in their head. I know I'm a non-typical kind of person." But yeah, how cool is it to have this voice in your head that's just like supportive and like yeah, like writes poetry, like romantic shit. Like this was like her romantic partner, Thought it was fascinating. But yeah, so I think the opportunity here is to experience some of that self-acceptance, some of that self-love, um that that can give you that complete feeling, that feeling like even even if you're by yourself, to not have that feeling like you're missing something, like I think you could have an opportunity to experience this kind of self completeness, self confidence, and sometimes just looking for it is all you need. Sometimes if you're just constantly looking for evidence of the opposite, then you're either at a neutral state or you go, oh, huh, yep, there it is. There's evidence that I don't love myself or whatever. I think just being mindful and just checking in with yourself if you're having one of these moments and noticing it and celebrating when you do, I think it could go a long way. Or this opportunity might symbolize, maybe you got some new ideas, or maybe you got some new leads on how to go about pursuing this state. Maybe like sometimes it's really just like it could just come down to some new way of thinking about life, new way of thinking about things. What I'm saying now could give you this idea that you could think, oh yeah, like you know. But yeah, so I think the opportunity is here to experience some some fulfilling self love, confidence, self acceptance. You know, all the wonderful things that come with that. I'm gonna wrap it up there. Thanks for listening. Drop me a like if you like, and leave a comment if you would like to be entered into a draw for a super exciting free one-on-one reading. I'll be back tomorrow. Take care.